What if the first world chess champion almost lost the crown before it even officially existed? In 1886, there was no FIDE, no rating system, and no official world title. Just two men who both believed they were the best player on Earth. One of them already called himself world champion. The other had just crushed the strongest tournament ever played. So how did this match even happen, and why did everything suddenly turn in the middle of the fight? Today, we're going back to the birth of the World Chess Championship. To understand the story of the first ever match for the chess crown between Wilhelm Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort in 1886, we need to go back 3 years earlier, to London. The London Chess Tournament of 1883 brought together almost all of the strongest chess players in the world at that time. The only major legend missing was Paul Morphy, who had already retired from competitive chess by then. The tournament was funded through donations from chess clubs and individual patrons, not only in England itself, but also across the British Empire. The total prize fund was around £1,050, with £300 awarded for first place, a very substantial sum by 19th century standards. 14 players took part in the event, competing in a double round-robin format, meaning everyone played each opponent twice. The time control was 1 hour for every 15 moves. If a game ended in a draw, it had to be replayed, and only after 3 consecutive draws would both players receive half a point. The idea was to encourage fighting chess and decisive results. In reality, it had the opposite effect. Some players ended up playing as many as 6 games against each other, all of them drawn. This tournament also went down in history as the first to use dual chess clocks. Wilhelm Steinitz was widely considered the main favorite going into the London tournament. By that time, he had already won major international events and defeated the strongest chess players of his era in head-to-head matches. He was also becoming famous for his groundbreaking ideas about positional play. In fact, Steinitz already referred to himself as the world chess champion, believing he had earned that title by beating all his major rivals in match play. However, to the surprise of many, the tournament was won by Johannes Zukertort. He played in a brilliant, aggressive, and highly tactical style, not only spectacular, but extremely effective. At one point during the event, Zukertort scored 22 points out of a possible 23, practically securing overall victory long before the tournament ended. Steinitz finished in second place, trailing the winner by a full 3 points, a significant margin, especially considering that Zukertort relaxed toward the end and even lost several games to players who finished near the bottom of the standings. Immediately after the tournament, a frustrated Steinitz challenged Zukertort to a head-to-head match, determined to prove that he was, in fact, the strongest chess player in the world. Negotiations dragged on for nearly 3 years. Over time, the idea of a simple duel evolved into a major international event, followed by chess fans around the globe. Since the two players were the top finishers in the strongest tournament of the era, it was decided that the winner of their match would not only receive a cash prize, but also the title of World's Strongest Chess Player. The match was scheduled to be played across 3 American cities, New York, St. Louis, and New Orleans. The winner would be the first player to score 10 victories, with draws not counting toward the total. If the score reached 9-9, the match would be declared a draw. As you can see, chess matches in that era were far more uncompromising than today, and there was no way to predict how long the contest might last. In addition to the title, the winner was guaranteed a prize of $750. To put that into perspective, an average worker at the time earned roughly $1 to $2 per day. Steinitz and Zukertort represented 2 completely different chess philosophies. Zukertort was a true romantic of the game, explosive, intuitive, constantly searching for spectacular combinations and sacrificial attacks. One of his most famous quotes was, "Without combinations, there is no chess art." Steinitz, on the other hand, focused on positional play, reliability, and minimizing mistakes rather than chasing visual brilliance. Jumping ahead for a moment, their duel truly lived up to expectations. It was tense, hard-fought, and uncompromising. In every single game, both players were playing for a win. The first draw didn't occur until Game 8. The match began with Zukertort taking the early initiative. 5 games were played in New York. Steinitz won the first one, but Zukertort then scored 4 wins in a row, building a commanding 4-1 lead. After that, the match moved to St. Louis, and that's where the momentum shifted. There are several theories as to why. One of them involves Zukertort's health. According to some accounts, he was suffering from serious medical issues, but refused to consult doctors, relying instead on self-treatment, as he himself had medical training. This video wouldn't be complete without analyzing at least one game from this historic chess match. Let me know in the comments what you prefer, deeper game analysis or more focus on the documentary side of chess history. And now, let's take a look at Game 6, the game that would become the true turning point of this legendary chess duel. So, Game 6 was played on February 3, 1886 in St. Louis. Steinitz has the white pieces, and at this point he is trailing badly, down 1-4 in the match. Once again, the players enter the Berling defense of the Ruy Lopez. Up to move 8, the opening completely repeats Game 4 of this match. Back then, Steinitz played Bishop F1, but this time he chooses a more natural developing move, Knight NC3. Black castles kingside. White develops the bishop to BD3. With this move, White blocks his own d-pawn and effectively gives up the immediate fight for the center. But in return, Steinitz clearly signals his intentions. He is playing for a win. White begins to apply pressure along the diagonal toward h7, which could later become a serious weakness around the black king. Black responds with bishop f6. White plays rook e3 with the clear idea of swinging the rook over to h3. From the very beginning, the position becomes extremely sharp. One careless move by Black could already lead to major trouble. For example, if Zukertort had played b6 intending to fianchetto the bishop on the long diagonal, White would have had a powerful tactical shot, a bishop sacrifice on h7. The queen joins the attack, the king retreats to g7, the rook comes to h3, and Black's position collapses. That is precisely why Black instead plays g6, shutting down the dangerous diagonal. White continues with b3, preparing to activate the dark-squared bishop, either onto the long diagonal or to a3 if needed. Black plays rook e8. White responds with queen f3, and Black follows with bishop g5. The rooks are exchanged, and White's bishop retreats to b2. At first glance, it may seem that White is simply allowing the pawn on d2 to be captured. However, taking that pawn is impossible because White would immediately strike back against f7, creating serious threats. According to modern engine analysis, Black's best defensive resource here is d5. After bishop d5, Black would have queen e7, followed by knight e4, attacking the bishop. The bishop retreats to h6, and White would then play rook e1. In this position, White threatens knight f6 check, a discovered check that would win the queen. The only move that avoids losing material is bishop e6, giving up the pawn on b7. The result is a position where White enjoys better coordination, a more active setup, and an extra pawn. Zukertort chooses a different path and plays c6 instead. White replies with knight n4, attacking the bishop, which retreats to e7. The white queen moves to e3. Black attacks the knight with the d-pawn, and White responds with queen d4, creating a direct mating threat. Black blocks with f6. Now the knight retreats to g3, and Black plays bishop e6. White activates the rook with rook e1, immediately putting pressure on the bishop. Black defends with knight g7. White launches a kingside pawn storm with h4. Black responds d7. White continues with h5. Black plays bishop f7, and White captures the critical pawn on g6, opening lines against the king. Black responds with bishop g6. White plays queen e3, and Black brings the king to f7. At this point, Black is forced to activate even the king just to hold the position together. White plays queen f4. Black responds with rook e8, and White plays rook e3. Black's position is now extremely difficult. His pieces are cramped on his own half of the board, the king is surrounded by his own army, and a single inaccuracy could cause the entire defense to collapse. Here, Black plays knight e6. White responds with queen g4. Black retreats with knight f8, and white jumps in with knight f5. Black counters with bishop c5, attacking the rook. White first gives a knight check, forcing the king to g7. And now something happens that would be impossible in modern chess. The players repeat the same position 4 times. Under today's rules, this would already be a draw by threefold repetition, but in the 19th century, that rule did not yet exist. Only on the 5th opportunity does Steinitz break the repetition by playing bishop g6. Queens are exchanged, followed by a rook exchange. Black plays king g6, and white answers with knight f6. The position has simplified, and white has emerged with an extra pawn. Even so, black still has drawing chances. Zukertort plays bishop b4, attacking the pawn. White defends with d3. Black plays knight e6. White improves the king with king f2. Then comes h5, followed by g4. Here, black plays h4, avoiding pawn exchanges. Ironically, as the rest of the game will show, it is precisely white's passed g-pawn that will become a constant and decisive threat. The game enters a maneuvering phase. A bishop is exchanged for a knight. Black's king desperately tries to both blockade the g-pawn and defend the pawn on h. b5, knight f4. Black cannot afford to exchange pieces here. If he does, white will simply play king f4, then king h4, and the g-pawn will queen. So black plays d4. White responds with knight d6. Black plays king f6. The knight cannot be captured for the same reason as before. The g-pawn would decide the game. Then white jumps to knight c5, attacking the pawn on b7. If black tries to defend with b6, white has knight d7, followed by king e6, exchanges, and once again the g-pawn promotes. So black is forced to give up the pawn on b7. The black king attempts to run toward the queenside pawns. na5, bishop f6, nc6, king e3. White is now up 3 pawns, and at this point, black no longer has any realistic drawing chances. After a few more moves, Zukertort resigns. After this victory, Wilhelm Steinitz continues to play with the same confidence and authority. Game by game, he completes one of the greatest comebacks in chess history, turning a desperate 1-4 deficit into a crushing 10-5 triumph. With this result, Steinitz is finally recognized, both by results and by legacy, as the first official world chess champion. For Johannes Zukertort, the story ends very differently. A true romantic of the chessboard, he never recovers from this defeat. He withdraws from competitive chess entirely. His illness worsens, and just 2 years later he passes away, far too young. For a moment, it seems as if romantic chess is dead forever, as if calculation and positional play have delivered the final verdict.
But history is never that simple. Everything changes once again when a young Cuban prodigy under intense public pressure is finally given a chance to play his first major international tournament, San Sebastian, 1911. What happens next shocks the chess world. How José Raúl Capablanca seizes that opportunity and how brilliance, intuition, and natural genius return to the center of the game, you can see in the previous video on this channel. You've just watched the story of the first World Chess Championship and one of the most important matches in chess history. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.